I don't know about you, but things like E3 or Gamescom used to be exciting. Gaming announcements used to be thrilling, as game devs went out on stage looking pale and awkward, but they were rock stars to me. But that was also back then when I wasn't cautious about new upcoming releases. Because nowadays, we get this.
The current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Wow.
Today, I want to talk about a few studios that in their glory days couldn't miss their mark, even if they were blind drunk. However, now in modern times, are now just blind drunk, as they wildly fire shit games into the air like a chimpanzee with a machine gun, or just a chimpanzee throwing its own poop. It doesn't matter, I'm sure you get the analogy. The most upsetting part of all of this is that the companies that have failed to deliver quality games were once really great companies. But the key word there is were. Because despite being at the pinnacle of the gaming industry, having an experienced team, and pretty much cheat code amounts of money, things kind of fell apart. Which begs the question, is it possible that success in the gaming industry eventually dooms a company's future?
We all suffering from success.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To where they pretty much just become a piñata that corporate suits beat up anytime they want a little bit of cash, while also stripping them of their creativity in the process. Let's examine a few companies, look at some of their past titles, and compare those to the hot porta potties that they have recently been pushing out onto the market. And to start things off, we're going to look at a company that is near and dear to my heart, and also the heart of this channel, Rockstar Games. But before we jump in, Raid Shadow Legends. Now, you've probably never heard of Raid because they rarely do sponsorships, but I actually play Raid Shadow Legends on my PC instead of working at my day job. And thank God for the autoplay button, because as most of you guys know, I kind of suck at video games. But Raid doesn't care, I just pick a lineup and Raid figures out how to kill my personal demons for me. But speaking of my day job, Raid also has bosses, but I can actually fight these bosses. One of my favorites is Sylvania, Guardian of the Spirit Keep. She's my favorite because the other ones keep kicking my ass. But defeating her actually kind of makes me feel a bit bad, because her backstory's actually like really tragic. She was betrayed by elves and they like killed her family, but I mean, f*** elves, they suck. But yeah, maybe that's something you should keep in mind while fighting her. As per usual, there's a ton of new content. With a fresh rotation of Hydra bosses and events and tournaments happening every day, there's always something going on in Raid. They even have some special Valentine's Day events coming up, where you can score a legendary champion. Which, Raid, will you be my Valentine? I'll divorce my wife for you. I'm not even joking right now. I'm not kidding at all. Right now is a great time to get started in Raid. Just click the link in the description, or just scan this QR code on screen, and you'll get access to Rector Drath. She's terrifying and also really hot. On top of that, you'll get 200k silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard. And all of this will be available as soon as you start the game by redeeming it here. So stop using your phone to like call your parents or pay your bills or whatever, and start using your phone for its intended purpose, playing Raid Shadow Legends. If you follow this channel, you know how much I appreciate all the features of GTA San Andreas and how ahead of its time that game was. Now the problem with this is that they set a very high bar, one that GTA 4 and 5 kind of struggled to clear. I'm not saying that GTA 4 and 5 are bad, that would be dumb if I said that, because they definitely were great games. And in my opinion, they did clear that bar, but not by much. The main problem is that with the exception of Red Dead Redemption 2, Rockstar hasn't released a new game since 2013. Everything we've seen from them has just been remakes and them dicking around with some stupid little idiot studio that just screws everything up.
Say it like it's a bad thing.
Shut up, Carl!
I'm looking at you, Grove Street Games. I hate you still. I'm still not okay with what you did to the trilogy, I gotta be honest. And this could have been fine if those remakes were good. But they weren't. And most of them were just needless. I mean, seriously, is anybody playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City on the Amazon Fire TV? What the hell is that even about? Jeff Bezos burnt down hundreds of acres of the Amazon rainforest just so he could sell that shit, and still nobody cares. If anybody remembers when the Amazon rainforest was burning down, that was actually Jeff Bezos that did that. It was all just a marketing ploy to sell you a TV. That guy's the worst. Billionaires. And it seems obvious that the GTA trilogy was made with as much love and passion as a prepackaged gas station sandwich.
I'm really disappointed.
They've been milking their IPs for so long at this point that there's probably 2 buckets under that cow, one for the milk and the other one for the udders that they ripped off as they just viciously tug at that cash cow they have. Weird analogy, sorry for making you picture a bucket full of severed udders, but Rockstar thinks that they're keeping GTA alive by constantly spamming us with online content updates. And yeah, it's making them money. But I'm not certain that's the only thing keeping this old game relevant. If you go over to Twitch or if you watch GTA videos on YouTube, a lot of the content there is based around modern roleplay servers and not the vanilla version of the game.
Hey, what they done to? Hey, you see this shit? Bro, someone help, man!
The story mode is so old at this point that it belongs in a wheelchair. And normal GTA Online kinda sucks, but the roleplay servers are pretty fun. Graphically, you can't deny that GTA 5 still looks great. Even the original PS3 version looks good. Still though, I have a couple bones to pick. I just don't feel a lot of things translated over from the San Andreas era to the modern era. San Andreas almost felt like an RPG. You could truly foster a connection with CJ. GTA 5 feels like I'm playing out some sort of scripted movie where I'm just a passenger to the experience. A passenger that jerks the steering wheel into every motorcycle I see because, come on, I have to hit that guy. But in GTA 5, I don't feel the same connection as I did to CJ. Oh my god, what the f am I even talking about? It's 2 a.m. and I'm talking about my feelings for a video game character. This is my life, let's just keep doing it, whatever. But with the lack of new games and the only focus being a bunch of shitty remakes for platforms that are stupid, it really makes me wonder, what the f are they doing there in their big fancy office? I mean, surely they're developing something, right? I mean, hopefully we get the GTA 6 announcement soon. I personally hope that it comes out on mobile and is online only. It'd be so f***ing cool, oh god, right? No, but in all honesty, I haven't fully lost my faith in GTA 6. However, I do have my doubts because if this company is willing to put their name on the Definitive Trilogy Edition, they're obviously okay with putting out a dumpster fire and not caring anymore. Now, at this point, I've kind of avoided Red Dead Redemption 2, because Red Dead Redemption 2 is a genuinely fantastic game. But they don't really get a pass here, because unfortunately, Red Dead Redemption 2 also has its fair share of controversy. The main complaint is now that Red Dead Online is treated like the bastard son of GTA Online. Red Dead Online doesn't really receive the same massive content updates that GTA does. There's only so much DLC you can add when hover bikes are out of the question. Simpler times means simpler shit. So they can't milk your wallet with a wide array of content while also staying true to the time period. And although strapping a rocket to a horse would be pretty cool, Red Dead Online could have some fantastic content outside of that. But since it can't be monetized to the extent that GTA 5 is, they just kind of forgot about it. Now, Rockstar has made mistakes, but they are far from the most egregious offender that we're discussing in this video. My verdict on Rockstar is they haven't really done anything in the past couple years, but it's not too late for them to turn it around. Just announce a new game and stop spamming us with garbage on GTA Online. It's so frustrating. I'm so over it. Please don't end up like the other companies we're about to talk about. Just don't do that, Rockstar. Just make sure GTA 6 comes out for iPhone and just chuck a ton of microtransactions in there. That's exactly how I picture it. It's gonna be amazing. Next up, we're gonna talk about a studio that maybe a lot of people have forgotten at this point, and that's BioWare. BioWare is another studio that for a while everyone thought could do no wrong. But saying that in 2022 kinda makes me sound like a dumbass. Shout out Anthem. Previously, they made some of the highest quality RPG games available, and even managed to get their hands on the largest IP to ever exist, Star Wars. You might have heard of it. This company was so trusted that critics would say their existence showed that JRPG companies were growing complacent, and yet still somehow f***ed all that up and grew complacent themselves. They brought us classics like the Mass Effect series, Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age, and Baldur's Gate. I don't know why, Baldur's Gate just cracks me up. I think it's a stupid name. Whatever, doesn't matter. This studio obviously knew what they were doing. They were the face of Western RPGs. But then, in 2008, tragedy struck. The housing crisis left millions of Americans bankrupt. Which sucked, yeah, not having a house anymore is kind of a bummer. But even worse than that, BioWare sold out. The once Canadian game studio founded by actual doctors, I'm not sure why I said it like that, I'm pretty sure that they're still Canadian. I don't think they can change that. But anyways, they were bought up by the most soulless, greedy, and corporate gaming company there is. Good old Electronic Arts, one of my favorite companies. Every time a successful little studio is swallowed up by the corporate whale, they always try to promise that they will remain independent and that they won't become corrupt. But yeah, when the f has that ever been true? Now, BioWare did hold out pretty well. They released Mass Effect 2 in 2010, 2 years later, which some people still believe is the best game in the series. So at first, it seemed like they were staying true to their word. Except for the fact that the original founders also left that year. Muziaka and Zeshuk. Holy shit, what are those names? I did my best with those names, I probably pronounced them wrong. And this was right before the release of Star Wars: The Old Republic, which is where things kind of fell apart. At the time, it was the most expensive game ever produced, with a budget on par of most Hollywood movies at $200 million. SWTOR, or Star Wars: The Old Republic, was supposed to be the WoW killer, meaning it would take the title as the top MMO from World of Warcraft. But like most games based on movies, it wasn't quite all it was made out to be. And despite reviews being positive or even outstanding, the hero engine wasn't quite heroic enough to support this game. Basically, the engine caused a lot of lag between button presses and the abilities actually going off, and this unresponsive gameplay made the game feel cheap compared to the quick, snappy combat of WoW, making PvP not very fun and more of a chore. Also, funny enough, most MMO players really don't give a shit about the story of the game, right? So all that writing and voice acting and all these parts that BioWare worked so hard on just ended up getting skipped by most players because, you know, screw that. I'm trying to level up. I don't care about the story in an MMO. They should have known, right? Like, come on, guys. Something else that is hilariously dumb is the space combat, because space combat in Star Wars is pretty much synonymous, right? So if we're making a Star Wars MMO, I'm sure you could imagine that the space battles should be epic and crazy. Well, not really. That whole section was single player. It wasn't technically a part of the massively multiplayer part of the game. Why are you doing this? If you're making an MMO about Star Wars, you should have big space battles and not make them like a single player arcade bullshit game. Whose idea was this? As a result of all this idiocy, SWTOR never quite climbed to the heights of the MMO that it was supposedly going to kill. And if that's not bad enough, Mass Effect 3 kinda went on to kill the Mass Effect series. Mass Effect 3 was a great example of how not fulfilling promises and dropping the ball on the ending can sour perceptions about a whole series. For many years, we were told by BioWare that all of our choices would be meaningful. Instead, we got boring gameplay for the last 30 minutes of the game and are treated to a cutscene that just has different colors based on the decisions that you made in the game. And if you're colorblind, then nothing you did in that game really matters. And the whole game was a waste of time for you. BioWare doesn't like disabled people. That's a joke, okay? Don't think I'm being honest. And if Mass Effect 3 wasn't bad enough for you, I'm pretty sure a lot of you will still remember Mass Effect Andromeda. I still have nightmares from those faces. I'm thinking of suing you, BioWare. It's been years since I've been able to get some sleep. So obviously these games weren't the best games, but they're not quite the crack that broke your mother's back. In my opinion, it was over for them when they released Anthem, a game that suffered from an identity crisis while also bricking people's PS4s. It just kind of felt like a bad clone of Destiny with like more dialogue.
Hey, I'm not saying one more word until you ask for forgiveness.
Filled with microtransactions, the game just kind of floundered like a dead fish for a little bit until it was eventually shut down. Which, thank God, we don't need another Destiny, even if there's flying. Not that cool anymore, dude. It seems like EA just kind of shoved their fist up BioWare's ass and used them like a puppet to make this game because they thought it would make them money, which really explains why it was as successful as it was. But there's still hope. BioWare is currently working on a new Dragon Age game, so maybe they're looking to return to their roots. And maybe it will be good. However, the fact that the lead creative director left during development isn't really a great sign. Probably not the best thing to have happen to a game. So I don't know, we'll see how that goes for him. But what does the future hold for BioWare? The once proud studio now has spent more time sucking than being an industry leader. I mean, sure, Star Wars: The Old Republic made like $1 billion. So I guess in EA's eyes, it was a commercial success, despite the fact that most people who have played it never really touched it again. So you might wonder, how did they do this? How EA does everything. They made all their money off a cash shop and microtransactions, and they even had the nerve to call it a cartel market. Cartels sell drugs. You're basically selling drugs to people. You get them addicted to a shitty game and then they spend all their money on it. So congratulations for ripping people off. Oh God, I just hate Electronic Arts. But the verdict that I have for BioWare is that they were kind of just swallowed up by EA and they'll probably never achieve the greatness they once did again. Kind of sucks, but I mean, look at everything they've done. It's kind of over for them. GG's. Now this last one is a doozy, and if you haven't guessed by now, we're gonna talk about Blizzard. Way back in the 90s, a little company almost struck a deal with Games Workshop to make games based on the Warhammer IP. That deal didn't work out. Instead, they would make something that turned out to be way bigger than the Warhammer IP ever was. Warcraft hit PCs and was praised as one of the greatest RTS games ever launched, and in turn made Blizzard financially successful. From there, Blizzard went on to make Warcraft 2, StarCraft, and the ARPG to end all ARPGs, Diablo. These games weren't just good for their time, they were pinnacles for their genres. StarCraft 2 in particular made professional gaming and esports a thing. With creative forces like Chris Metzen building the world and lore, the unique art styles of people like Sam Diddler, Didier? It's not Diddler, okay? But anyways, these early Blizzard games paved the way for even more greatness, with people that would someday go on to make a all-star team-like roster of game developers. Blizzard was one of the only companies where devs were recognizable to their fans, often due to their community interactions. And all of this happened before they made a little game that you might have heard of. WoW, or World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft made the MMORPG genre. WoW exploded onto the scene, eventually reaching absurd amounts of players. And since then, we've seen Overwatch, StarCraft 2, and Hearthstone. These games were all praised and almost universally loved by the player base. But all good things must come to an end. In 2008, Blizzard merged with Activision, and this is where we got the same spiel of how they're gonna remain independent and they're not gonna get corrupt by the big corporate company and blah blah blah, yada and yada, whatever. So it really isn't any surprise that the cracks in Blizzard's legendary armor started to spring up shortly after this time. Wrath of the Lich King released in 2008, and WoW started to approach its highest subscriber numbers ever, eventually reaching the peak during the launch of Cataclysm in 2010. And much like BioWare, Blizzard saw a good amount of success even years after the merger. But that's probably before all the corporate set in, because shortly after, it just started to go downhill fast. WoW's next expansion wasn't really true to the Warcraft theme. It was pandas. Yeah, pandas. Hell yeah, right? This is so cool. I feel like somebody just watched Kung Fu Panda and they were like, oh yeah, that's it, let's do that. Thanks, Jack Black. But it wasn't the end of the world because most WoW players got over this hiccup pretty quickly. But it was starting to become noticeable that the WoW dev team was changing over the years, and with that, changes to the game were made. Jeff Kaplan moved over to Overwatch, which, lucky him, that's a much better game in my opinion. Greg Ghostcrawler Street left Blizzard for Riot in 2013. I don't know if Ghostcrawler's like a cool nickname or a weird one, I can't decide. And Rob Pardo left soon after in 2014. From here, WoW began losing subscribers. And because of this, they stopped reporting their subscriber numbers, stating that it didn't accurately reflect the game's financials by reporting the subscriber numbers. I wonder why that is. Well, an in-game cash shop was added, and although the items in there were only cosmetic, it created a way for Blizzard to increase its revenue, even with smaller sub numbers, much like other MMOs like Sword Horror have already done. And then, Warlords of Draenor, more like Warlords of Terrano, right? Because it belongs in a drain. Okay, I'll try to stop ad-libbing stupid jokes. But this was a dumbass alternate reality story that delivered some of the driest content ever in a WoW expansion, with large chunks of it being cut out, social aspects being destroyed due to raid finder and player garrisons, and just a general disillusionment with the game's core players. Expansions continue to come out, but it was clear to WoW players that every expansion was designed to just bog players down with a bigger list of chores to complete. Appropriately, WoW players bitched about this, but nothing really happened. A common philosophy among game devs was that players are really good at identifying problems and things that aren't fun in a game, but they're not necessarily good at coming up with solutions for these problems. Blizzard hears this and thinks that the players are just universally wrong and don't know what they want.
You don't want to do that.
Effectively just completely missing the first part of that philosophy. And beyond WoW, other failures in both marketing, development, and just the inability to read the room have resulted in some other issues. Here's a short list of things they've f***ed up. Saying you think you do, but you don't when players asked for Classic WoW. Adding a cash shop player boost to Classic WoW's first expansion. Putting their best devs on a mobile game. Do you guys not have phones? Overwatch 2 looking like a carbon copy of Overwatch 1. Terrible remake of Warcraft 3 and then shutting down support and online services to the original version of Warcraft 3. What the fuck? Why would you do that? That's so stupid. Banning a competitor, taking their prize money, and banning the 2 casters after the player expressed support for Hong Kong. Crowdfunding a tournament prize via the cash shop only for the prize amount to not be increased. More hated WoW expansions. No sign of StarCraft 3 or anything with the StarCraft IP. Killing Heroes of the Storm's pro scene. Shutting down WoW private servers. Not doing anything about an absurd amount of bots and farmers in WoW. WoW tokens, aka legally buying gold. Laying off 800 employees at once in 2018. Blacklisting a Hearthstone pro due to his marriage to a former Blizzard employee. 2 of Blizzard's founders leaving. Oh yeah, and all that isn't even talking about their recent allegations, which I'm sure you've probably heard of. Blizzard somehow managed to foster probably one of the worst corporate environments imaginable. Low pay, sexual misconduct, and unfairness have resulted in several walkouts by Blizzard employees. Rightfully so. I'm just gonna go ahead and read this quote from the investigation into all this stuff. In the office, women are subjected to cube crawls, in which male employees drink copious amounts of alcohol as they crawl their way through various cubicles in the office and often engage in inappropriate behavior toward female employees. Male employees proudly come into work hungover, play video games for long periods of time during work while delegating their responsibilities to female employees, engaging in banter about their sexual encounters, talking openly about female bodies, and joking about R-words. You can imagine what R-words is. And if that's not cringe, this next part certainly is. Some of the Blizzard devs called their suite the Cosby Room at BlizzCon in 2013. Which, even if you're joking about that, if you're calling your room the Cosby Suite, you suck. You are a gross, creepy human being. You are not a cool guy. And all this was complete with group messages like these. Oh, by the way, Jesse McCree, that guy in the convo that you just read, that's who McCree in Overwatch is named after. So, after stuff like this came out, Blizzard announced that they would be renaming any characters or NPCs that reference their employees while vehemently denying wrongdoing, or showing any compassion at all for the employees affected by this. And in possibly the most blatantly meaningless gesture they could muster, they renamed McCree. So I guess it's Cassidy now. Oh yeah, I guess they also changed this lady into a bowl of fruit and took away some cleavage. What a pro gamer move. Score 1 for women everywhere. A lot of the devs that weren't affected by this moved on. I'll put what they did on screen so I don't have to read another list to you. But if a lot of your employees are striking, you're condescending to your customers, and all of your best talent has fled the company to start their own personal endeavors, then your company probably sucks. Like really hard, sucks really hard, like a vacuum. It's not even over yet, though. All the while this is all happening, the CEO, Bobby Kotick, put out statements that were so enraging that they got the person he forced to put the statements out under their name fired. Imagine being a CEO and saying something so terrible to the consumers that it gets the guy who says it fired. How are you CEO at this point? I really hate this guy. He sucks a bag of Blizzard isn't only the biggest failure on this list, they're like one of the biggest failures in companies in general, not even gaming. They're not good at it. From creators of genre-defining games to money-grubbing, sexist, corporate dickheads under Activision's thumb. My verdict for Blizzard is that the spirit of old Blizzard will be carried out under these new companies that were started by the competent devs that left previously. And while this happens, Blizzard will just continue to crumble under the weight of its terrible decisions and toxic corporate culture. Outside of these main larger companies, I have a few honorable mentions I want to talk about that I don't really think fit on the list, but are still worth mentioning. Bethesda, in my opinion, only released one bad game, and that's Fallout 76, which I still played the shit out of that game. I just love Fallout stuff. It wasn't good objectively, but I didn't care. I dealt with the bugs, and I'm level like 80 in it. whatever. But they're not here because Starfield looks pretty good and they haven't really done anything too terrible, so I don't think it's safe to say that they have fallen yet. CD Projekt Red, or CD Projekt, which is how you say it in Polish, in case you want a little culture, dropped the dog turd that was Cyberpunk after a great track record. However, again, this is only one game, and I feel like they've been in timeout enough and probably received enough spankings from everybody to realize we shouldn't mess up again, and we'll do better next time. I still have faith. Let's hope they don't screw us over again. And lastly, I want to mention Grove Street Games, the creators of one of the greatest experiences I've ever played, the GTA Definitive Edition trilogy. They're not included in here because it's hard to have a fall from grace when everything you've released sucked ass to begin with, so you can't really have a fall if you never had a rise. I just wanted to talk shit about them a little bit more. So yeah, they weren't brought up because they've just never been a good company in the first place. Good job, Grove Street Games. You can still eat a big dick. There are a lot of negative videos about video games and game companies, but this one is more about the industry as a whole. Game companies rise to prominence, founders and employees leave, and as they're bought up by bigger companies, they just begin to lose sight of what made them great in the first place. It's a story in game development that has been on repeat since the early 2000s. When everything is about making surefire, money-making hits, innovation kind of goes out the window. Every year or two, there's a new COD, a new Madden, and a new Assassin's Creed. But only a couple of those games actually stand out because they don't really innovate from year to year. And it feels like a lot of innovation is being spent on creative ways to get more money from you. They follow a formula: don't try anything new, and make each game a slightly altered copy of the last one that was successful, usually for the worst. And while we may buy and play some of these games in hopes that they'll be something special, I can't help but feel like most of my favorite experiences in gaming over the past couple years haven't come from big studios, and instead were the product of some small, low-budget studio just trying something new. I don't think there's any fixing this unless big companies find a new direction, or leadership that fosters creativity and thus goodwill with the players. But for companies like Rockstar, BioWare, and Blizzard, they all have to realize they're sort of in a place where they can either snap back into the ethos that made them great in the first place, or continue erasing all the goodwill that they fostered, until eventually fans have no more goodwill with them. I guess, though, there's still hope, and hopefully other companies can learn from these failures, like Square Enix. Square Enix has fostered a great deal of goodwill with Final Fantasy XIV as of late, and everything's looking pretty good. Oh, motherfucker, they're putting NFTs in it? Why? NFTs are so stupid. Who the hell's buying NFTs? It's like a dumbass game of a hot potato. You buy them and sell them for more money until some asshole gets stuck with them. Me, never mind. Whatever. Good job, Final Fantasy XIV. I guess it's true. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Thanks for watching.
Wow, what a great video.